hello, if you're going to kill me, at least give me some context. What's up, book nerds? I'm Lucky's Universe, and in this week's video, we will be discussing a subject that strikes fear into the hearts of all bookworms: book to screen adaptions. Lord have mercy. This actually terrifies me. Forget dog-earing pages, forget overdue library books. I would rather socialize with people than learn that my favorite book is being turned into a movie, and I hate people. The years between 2008 and 2016 were like Pride, but for YA adaptions. Every way you turned, there was Twilight, The Hunger Games, The Maze Runner, that one fifth wave movie everyone forgot about. There was money to be made, and people wanted a piece of the action. However, turning a much-loved series into a movie for the masses is not so straightforward as putting dialogue on a page and calling it a script, nay, and if you thought that, you are a simpleton. Let's break it down. Reading a book can take days at best, or weeks if you're normal and not an insane speed reader. But a movie, you only watch in a few short hours. It becomes obvious that not everything in the book can be included in the movie for the sake of time. Plot, dialogue, and even entire characters can be cut out. Casting actors to play book characters is a lot like fighting Godzilla with a butter knife. There's a lot laying around, but none of them will actually achieve your goal. You're faced with the mammoth task of not only finding an actor who can play the character well, but fit the image that readers have been building up in their mind for years. Even if you get past all these obstacles, there's issues like budget and promotion. There's so much that goes into adapting a book for screen, and it's just not possible for all of them to be good. For this video, I have chosen 3 movie adaptions that are pretty popular for being pretty bad. I feel a little bit bad for singling these movies out as bad adaptions because it's somebody's hard work that I'm about to shit all over. But we're not hating on any individuals here. We're just talking about the movies as a whole and the elements that make up a failed adaptation. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first movie that I'm bringing to the table is The Mortal Instruments' City of Bones, or as I like to call it, the complete destruction of my childhood innocence. It came out in 2013, and everyone was really hyped for it because at this point, Cassandra Clare's books and the Shadowhunter universe was at its peak. Teenagers across the world, myself included, were obsessed with hot people in leather slaying demons. Lily Collins was cast as Clary, and Jamie Campbell Bower was Jace. And for the most part, nobody seemed to have many complaints about that. Even though this movie tanked, I will stand by my opinion that Jamie Campbell Bower was the Jace, and nobody will ever come close to him in my mind. Fight me. Don't fight me, I'm weak. The movie itself had a great budget, okay directors, the author herself was pretty involved in the whole process. So it begs the question, why was this movie absolutely fucking trash? If you read YA, you probably know what The Mortal Instruments is about. But in case you don't, the general plot is that this girl named Clary discovers a species of half human, half angels who live in New York, and they go around slaying demons, and they're called Shadowhunters. She falls in love with a Shadowhunter named Jace, and then she finds out that he's her brother. I know, a lot to unpack there. And that's the first book, which is what the movie was based on. This movie received a 13% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 58% audience score, which, you know, it's not 0. And I think we should be proud of that. Let me read out a few of my favorite reviews. Outlandishly cliched and cocky-eyed, The Mortal Instruments' City of Bones is meshed together with all the conviction of preparing homemade goulash, but without a comprehensive taste for escapist originality. Who cares about a life or death battle with evil spirits when there's angst-ridden teen relationship drama in the mix? Awful, expensive, overlong, unremittingly dull attempt to start a Twilight-like franchise. Plans were already underway for the sequel before this was released. They might just want to wait to see if anybody's interested first. So anyway, you can probably gather people weren't clamoring for the sequel, but why? If Twilight and The Hunger Games were so successful, why not City of Bones? A large part of the complaint was the plot of the movie. The first book, The Mortal Instruments, is roughly 500 pages long, so as you can imagine, a lot needed to be taken out in order to fit it into a 2-hour film. Unfortunately, in an attempt to speed up the plot, the directors, editors, producers, whoever dictated the script cut out like everything. It was like asking for a burger and being served with 2 bread buns with a lonely slice of tomato in the middle. In the first book, the main characters have to fight a villain named Valentine, who is elusive for most of the story but then pops up at the end. And even though we don't get a lot from that character, readers get tons of backstory and history in order to build up Valentine's character in their heads. However, in the movie, Valentine was given very little character building, which left readers kind of confused. And those who hadn't read the books were pretty much lost as to who this Valentine character was and why he was going around murdering people. Like, hello, if you're going to kill me, at least give me some context. The movie focused more on the romance between Jace and Clary, aka the incest, as well as introducing the Shadowhunter world, which involved a lot of fighting demons in quirky corners of Brooklyn, New York, because, you know, we're not like other girls. The story lacked direction and meaning and felt like a whole lot of nothing, when really what readers wanted was the story that they all knew and loved. A personal pet peeve of mine when it comes to cutting the plot of the book was specifically the role that the character Isabel played in the movie, or more accurately, the lack thereof. Fans of the original book know that Isabel is a main character along with her brother Alec, Jace, Clary's friend Simon, and Magnus the Warlock. These characters form that found family group that readers love. But in the movie, Isabel barely has any lines or screen time. She wasn't included as a main character, which confused me to no end. I felt so sad watching interviews of the main cast and Isabel's actress wasn't a part of it. It felt strange that writers would cut her from the story and the plot felt empty without her contribution. In summary, the main reason why the Multiple Instruments City of Bones movie adaptation failed was because whoever was in charge of the adaptation was really shitty at deciding what parts needed to be cut. That 58% audience score kind of just feels like viewers who had never read the books and then lovers of the books who just wanted to believe the best. Needless to say, we never got a sequel. It went on to be turned into a TV show and I just... we're not going to talk about the TV show. Now we move on to a movie franchise that breaks my poor little heart. Divergent. So much potential, such bad execution. Divergent is based on a best-selling dystopian series about a girl who's not like other girls, who fights the evil government system that tries to separate people into groups, aka every YA dystopian novel ever, but who's complaining. The first movie came out in 2014 starring Shailene Woodley and Theo James, aka My Bisexual Awakening. The first movie was really well received. I personally enjoyed it. It only got a 41% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but a 69% audience score. So although critics weren't over the moon, fans were fairly content. And I mean, who wouldn't be? Have you seen the cast? I'd commit to a life of lying on the pavement just so one day one of these actors might step on me. Then the second movie came out, Insurgent, and viewers started scratching their heads. It wasn't bad, per se, in the way that the Caterpie Pokemon isn't bad. Like, it's fine, it's just no one's favorite. The audience rating for the sequel dropped to 58% and Rotten Tomatoes gave it a depressing 28%. And then finally, Allegiant Part 1 was released and shit hit the fan. 41% audience score, a scathing 11% Rotten Tomatoes score, which surprisingly is very close to my grade average in math. So how did this happen? A huge misstep in the Divergent film franchise was splitting the last film into 2. The original series by author Veronica Roth was a trilogy, but producers wanted to make 4 films. Why, you ask? Well, it was a trend at the time, with the Harry Potter, Twilight, and Hunger Games final films all being split into 2 parts. When you have a series that you think is going to be a huge hit, it makes sense to try and make as many movies out of it as possible. However, Divergent was not the hit that people expected it to be, especially by the time the 3rd movie came out. Fans and critics commented that the split didn't look like it had been executed well and the plot was lacking. Finally, rather than sink more money into a failing franchise, the studio pulled the plug. Another reason why the Divergent films didn't perform as well as their other YA counterparts lies in the actual construction of the plot. Divergent leans very hard into the sci-fi genre, with a very intricate plot about social structure mixed in with romance. It was argued that the plot itself was too difficult to follow for those who hadn't read the books. Furthermore, the Divergent films were coming out at much the same time as a lot of other YA dystopian movies. I Am 4, The Host, The Giver, many more. People were, to put it softly, kind of bored of it. A real nail in the coffin was the cast pulling out of the final film. After the absolute tragedy of Allegiant, it was announced that the final film would actually be a TV film, which was supposed to be both a wrap-up of the movies and also a foundation for a TV series later on. However, most of the original cast made it clear that they would not be reprising their roles in the TV film, and that pretty much saw the end of the Divergent film franchise. And now we move on to the final book-to-film adaptation we'll be discussing today, Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief. 53% audience score, 49% Rotten Tomatoes score, extremely average. Also, I should point out that I'm not just using Rotten Tomatoes to determine how well these movies did. I just find the percentages helpful to consolidate people's general opinions. The year is 2010. And the beloved children's book series Percy Jackson begins its progression into a blockbuster film franchise. Or so everyone hoped. In reality, the movie was shit, and I'm gonna tell you why. I mean, even the author thought the movie was shit, and that's when you know it's really bad. The original book series starts with all the characters being around 11 or 12 years old, and the series follows them throughout the years until they turn 16. However, the movie decided to age all the characters up from the beginning, making them already 16. This may seem like a small alteration, but it actually changed core elements of the plot. In the book series, the two main characters, Percy and Annabeth, start off as enemies, then sort of allies, then friends, and then finally, in the final book, lovers. But aging Annabeth and Percy up from the beginning meant that romantic tension was introduced right at the start, and fans weren't sure how to feel about that. It also took away from the true meaning of the series. Percy Jackson and the Olympians was meant not only as a fantasy story, but also as a coming-of-age series, much like Harry Potter. With the characters already being of age, this element was destroyed. In the book series, it takes years for Percy to master his Son of Poseidon powers, but in the movie, he just gets it straight away. In the books, Percy's best friend Grover is supposed to be shy, and then he gains confidence throughout the series. But in the movies, his character was made confident from the beginning. It seemed like the movie just hit the ground running and all the characters were fully formed and there was just no room for progression. In terms of the plot, the movie incorporated plot points and monsters that were seen in later books, leaving fans wondering what was gonna happen in the next movies. Even the main quest of the Lightning Thief was altered. In the books, Percy was encouraged to go on a quest to recover Zeus's lightning bolt and clear his name. But in the movies, him and his friends snuck out of Camp Half-Blood because they were forbidden to go. During the quest, Percy defeats one of the villains, Luke, almost immediately, and he's already become this great warrior, whereas in the book series he has to build himself up and work for years to be able to defeat Luke. With such a confusing and quite frankly terrible foundation, the movie didn't set itself up well for the sequel, Percy Jackson: Sea of Monsters. In the books, the villain spends years trying to bring back an old god, which Percy then defeats in the last book. But in the second movie, that's what happens, and it left fans wondering what was gonna happen in the other movies. The sequel ended up doing averagely, we never got any more movies, and it's probably for the best. Readers always expect deviations from source material when it comes to adaptations, but I don't think Percy Jackson fans expected that much deviation. So there you have it, 3 book-to-movie adaptations that were absolutely awful and why. Leave your book-to-movie nightmares in the comments and let me know if you actually liked any of the movies that I mentioned. I'd love to know why. If you don't already follow me on TikTok, go check that out. I post some pretty cool stuff on there. I will also leave a link to my Goodreads and my Instagram account down below so you can keep up with what I'm reading. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you later.